Hi, welcome to New Wave. I'm your host, Shawna Patruno, and today we have an amazing guest.
My name is Emili Adame, and I'm a soul reader, astrologer, and an intuitive healer.
Okay, so I actually just had a session with you before we started this, and that was definitely something I've not done. Can you expand on what that looks like for the audience? And then I'll explain kind of what it felt like to have the process done.
Sure. So I read the natal chart, but I read where I feel most of the energy is in each house. And then I read the soul's mission and destiny. And I, you know, am all about authenticity and the truth. And so I really have people kind of come face to face with the things that they need to learn and where they need to really go in this life and what they need to let go of. And then I move into the cards and I explain the energy that a person comes in with, and then the different cycles and periods that they're in. And then I will have the client ask questions and will actually read either past, present, or future energy.
I just had this done with you, Emily, and at first I was just kind of letting you go about it. Like it started off and I was shocked with some of the stuff you picked up about me. How do you pick up people's energy? Because what you picked up on me was actually shocking, and I'll explain why in just a second. But how do you pick up on someone's energy? How do you prep for this? What does the process look like for you?
So before anything, I will ask my guides and I will ask your guides for permission to read your energy. And it comes to me almost like a channel to a radio station. I get flashes, pictures, and also information. And I couple that also with the energy from the natal chart. So I'm clairaudient, clairsentient, and clairvoyant, and it comes to me differently. So leading up to this, at times I can also have dreams about clients that I'm about to read, or I will see different scenarios, watch them speak, and get flashes of information. The first time you and I spoke on the phone, I received information. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's like turning on either a radio station or tuning into a certain channel. And I pick up on this information. And again, I ask for permission before I do it.
Amazing. So for me, I don't mind us kind of breaking down what that looked like. So for me, what did you pick up for me right away? Because you guys, I don't care if people hear this or not. Like, what was the first thing that you kind of picked up from me? And how did you prep for our conversation?
Well, one of the first things that I picked up on was eating disorder energy, fragile energy, and then needing to build more courage. I felt that from our first phone call, but I was not comfortable yet speaking about that energy until the reading. And so I felt really deeply that for you, you needed to move away from, needing ultimate harmony and moving into more of selfish assertion and leadership and courage and even more of a warrior spirit. I could feel that there was just a fragility about you.
And after I had the reading done, one of my huge things, so as listeners know, I have had a journey with an eating disorder and I have openly shared about that. So that's definitely something, but I haven't told a lot of people that I actually struggle with wanting everything to be balanced. And I really have a hard time with conflict and speaking my truth and actually living in this duality system of the universe. And it's not something I talk to a lot of people about. So when you picked up on that, I needed to be selfish. Often I found that very interesting because I have a hard time making conflict. And what were your exact words to me, basically? You told me that it's kind of good for me to kind of be more impulsive in the things that I was kind of trying to move away from.
Yeah, so you need to be more assertive, more impulsive, and speak your truth in the moment, regardless of how another person may feel. Now, for other people, this, may sound like, oh, well, that's not very nice. But for you, you've had so many past lives where you were either on the sidelines or you were in, harmony. And you need to move away from that. In fact, in order for you to align, you have to be courageous And part of that is owning your truth, and aligning yourself is by, speaking up about exactly how you feel.
So I would have never thought that that would be advice that I would have got, but that was exactly what I needed to hear, because a lot of my conflicts, actually, I think I had a really big conflict last year. And I think it was because I was holding on to what was upsetting me. And it was like I erupted, but it was because I thought strategically. Often I think too strategically. So the information that you have given me is actually how to kind of disappoint people in the moment rather than strategically planning for harmony, which is what I do. I'm often thinking, how can I do this the most calculated way to not upset someone? So that's been the most helpful thing that I've heard in a really long time. And no one's ever given me that information. So I'm assuming everybody's energy is different for you. So how do you decide what reading is best for a client?
So ultimately, the first reading is typically the soul mapping. This is really if someone wants to dig deep into the soul mission, and you had a soul mapping. This is where I really fully pick up on the energy. The next reading is just a soul reading, and that's the cards. This is when I look at past, present, and future energy. This is where, more questions come into play, but also lessons and energy. And so typically people start with a soul reading, and then as they continue to work with me, a soul mapping. And as they continue to work with me, they will come back then and do soul readings with me. And then we can move on also into soul work, where I actually tailor the sessions to the individual based on what their soul's journey is needing and where they're needing to heal or discover new parts of themselves in order for them to raise their level of consciousness on this journey. And that could entail self-love work, that can entail heart frequency work, and that also entails shadow work. I find it very important that all of my clients do shadow work at some point, because I feel you cannot be a fully spiritual individual unless you're really looking at your darkness. It is paramount, that I move my clients into authenticity. And I express that the work is hard. It is not easy. It is not, something that happens overnight. It takes commitment and spiritual discipline.
That's amazing, Emily. I actually want to ask you another question on shadow work. What put you on your mission, Emily? And how did you learn about shadow work? And have you done your own shadow work? And what did the process look like for you?
Yeah, so I actually, since I was little, I knew that I was going to become a fashion designer. And I grew up acting, singing, dancing. I was a model for some time. And then I went into the fashion world. I had my own shoe line through Keds under my own name. And I had a high-end jewelry line. And at some point, I just felt that I wasn't living in my purpose anymore. I also knew at a very young age that the later half of my life, that I would do something very spiritual. And about 15 years ago, I had experienced some personal tragedies in my life that shifted me onto a spiritual path. And my mother actually had spoken to me about possibly learning how to meditate by going to a Buddhist temple. I grew up Catholic, but I never felt connected to the church. It was something that I felt very deeply that I needed to separate myself from. And so when the time was right, I did, which was very difficult for my family at the time. And my mom did become more open to everything. She's very spiritual now, but she was the one that introduced me to this Buddhist temple. And I went weekly and I learned how to meditate from the monks there. And it was extremely difficult. I was a person that was so in my mind that would keep me up at night. And I had, horrible anxiety. And I ended up going on my first retreat at the temple, which is a 3 to 7 day retreat. And it's no speaking, no writing, no reading for the entire retreat. And it's 9 hours a day of meditation. It's pretty extreme for someone who, didn't know how to meditate 3 months prior. So walking, sitting, eating are all meditations. We would get up at 5:45 a.m. It was freezing, and we would try to tame the monkey brain. And I learned. The first time I went, I didn't feel like I came away with anything, and I was very frustrated. And then the second year I went back and I had 20 minutes of enlightenment, and it changed my entire life. That experience set me on a new path. And since probably elementary school, I was very interested in esoteric. I was reading astrology books. I was, playing with divination. I was making wands for Halloween. I was always a black cat or a fortune teller or a witch. But I hid these things as I got older. They were not accepted. And I live in Texas. I love Texas, but I grew up in a very conservative culture here. And I had to hide parts of myself, and I was not being authentic. And it was very painful for me. I became very open to crystals and, even learning about herbalism and everything that I could possibly learn. I'm a self-taught astrologer. And about 2 years ago, I realized that I was supposed to be, moving on to this more spiritual path. And it more looked like that I was to be helping people to heal themselves. And so I moved into this work, and it was like, as soon as I moved into it, every door opened. My tragedy, my pain, all of the transformations I had gone through, all of the dark night of souls that I had had of the last 15 years, which were so hard and so painful. I mean, I can sit here and say that I am a completely different person. And part of my soul's mission and destiny is to step into my light. So for me, it was important to step into my light and therefore also help other people while doing it. I feel so called to this work, and there's more that's going to come from this. And I feel a sense of satisfaction being able to help people to really take a deep look at themselves. I myself, had to do shadow work. Shadow work was very, very painful for me. There were parts of myself that I did not like. My shadow is in Scorpio, and that's a very intense shadow. I, personally felt that it was work that I had to do in order to be able to help others also. I don't really feel that you fully heal your shadow. Your shadow is something that you dance with. It's where you can pull power and strength from. It's always there. It's more of an observation, but it can still come up. And the shadow is the unconscious being made conscious. It is what you are denying about yourself. It is what is being presented to you or reflected to you in other people. For instance, if you meet someone and you don't like them, it's probably because there's a part of them that you see that is actually within yourself, and it's being reflected back to you. And that shows you that that's something that you need to work on. And so I do this work with other people. I feel very strongly about it.
That's so cool. Basically hearing that the last part, there's something, and I'm sitting there looking at it, and there's something that you said from the reading that you did on me. And I'm like, yeah, there was one person who really bothered me, but I would be like, there's people who I'm like, oh, you don't like committing to things. And then you said that for me, lack of commitment is a huge thing. And I'm wishy-washy with some things, like I don't dive all in, and commitment has been something that has been really hard for me. And all the people who have really pissed me off, they had commitment issues. And I'm just saying, that's interesting. So obviously hearing something so like what you would assume is darkness, how do you deliver that to someone and say, hey, you might need to work on, like, I don't know, for me, exactly what my exact shadow thing is. How do you say that to someone and help them through that journey? We'll get back to that after this quick pause.